I talk a lot about Alton Towers on this channel, and there's two reasons why. One being my videos where I talk about Alton Towers, or my Alton Towers Park vlogs, are where a lot of my subscribers have actually discovered my channel and want to see more of. And two, being it's the biggest theme park here in the UK, and there's always something new and exciting to talk about. I've made videos giving out my favourite Alton Towers tips and tricks, current and upcoming events, and of course made various different vlogs. But I've never really sat down and discussed what I think lies ahead for the resort. So, in today's video, I'm going to be giving you my thoughts and predictions about what is next for Alton Towers. Whew. Have I caught the sun a little bit there? That's not good. You know what? I don't do this very often where I literally just sit down and talk about theme parks. I usually have my videos all planned out. I usually have a script. But I thought I'd do things a little bit different today. I thought I'd just sit down here and talk about what I think is next for the Alton Towers Resort. I mean, these are just my predictions. Some of them could come true, none of them could come true, or all of them could come true. We'll just have to see over the next few years. But yeah, we're gonna be talking about what is next for the Alton Towers Resort. I'm going to try and keep this video positive, but I am going to start with a negative, and that is the price change. If you've ever been to Alton Towers, you'll know that it isn't that cheap to get into the park. It is one of the more expensive parks to go to. So let's look back a few years ago, back in 2018. It was £55 for your entry ticket. This isn't including the 2-for-1 vouchers or any vouchers. These were on the day prices. So yeah, it was £55 back in 2018, which is a lot. But the next year, it actually went up to £56 in 2019. So over the few years, it's increased slightly. But if you look 4 years ago, back in 2018, to this year, it has jumped up dramatically. It has jumped up by £10 because it is now £65 for an entry ticket into Alton Towers, which in my opinion is a lot. As I said, this is the on the day price, so if you do have your 2-for-1 vouchers that you can get on cereal boxes and hand soap, then of course it will be halved, so it will be £32.50 if you obviously split it with the person who's buying the ticket. So yeah, it's not too bad if you do have that 2-for-1 voucher or you book online, but at the end of the day you're still paying more than you would a few years ago. Now you've also got to take into account though that there is a lot more Alton Towers now than there were a few years ago, especially for the family side of things, like with the CBeebies Land and with the World of David Walliams. And not only do you have those new additions, you also have a load of new events as well, such as Mardi Gras and Oktoberfest. So if you take all those into account, then you can see why they might have raised the price of the ticket, but it's still a lot of money really, isn't it? And I do think that the more events that they introduce and the more that they bring to the park, then that admission price is going to keep going up. I'm a huge fan of the Disney parks, and entry tickets for those parks are extremely high. I mean, for Disneyland Paris, I think it's around £100 a day to go to Disneyland Paris. So yeah, they're much more expensive than Alton Towers, but you could argue that you are getting a lot more than you do get at Alton Towers at those Disney parks because you have all the different parades. But yeah, I can see why Alton Towers may be raising the prices for admission. But in my opinion, I think it's going a little bit too high, and I really hope they don't raise it anymore, but I think they might do. Right, so let's talk about Nemesis, one of Alton Towers' biggest and best coasters, a favourite among many, but unfortunately is going to be closing very shortly. When I say it's closing, I don't mean forever, but it will be closing temporarily while it gets a retrack. Now, you're probably already aware of this, as it was announced back in January this year. I could make a full video about this retrack, but there's plenty of videos out there that go into depth about what they're going to be doing to Nemesis, so go check those out. But I just quickly wanted to add it in this video, because it's looking like Nemesis are going to be staying around for a lot longer than we thought last season. Because last season, we thought it was going to be the end of Nemesis. I mean, how long has it been open now? 28 years. It's been open 28 years. So it is a very old coaster now. In fact, it's older than me. So yeah, that's why it's getting a retrack, just to freshen things up a bit. With this retrack, it's going to be a lot smoother, and it's also going to make it a little bit more quieter too. We actually did a similar retrack over at Universal's Islands of Adventure in Orlando with the Incredible Hulk coaster. This was back in 2015 and it closed for a major overhaul. The whole coaster received a new track and supports from the highest point to the brake run. It also got new trains and an updated control system. Now this is something that could possibly happen for Nemesis, and I think that would be amazing. I think over the 28 years, I feel like the story of Nemesis has died off a bit and people don't really know what it's about. I love a good backstory to a ride on a roller coaster, and Nemesis has a great one, and I feel like that story's kind of died off over the 28 years it's been open. So I think with this retrack they could do a great job in not re-theming, but retelling that story, adding some more theming, and yeah, bringing that story back that was introduced 28 years ago. So yeah, the main point is Nemesis is going to be here to stay for a lot longer, maybe another 30 years, we'll just have to see, but all we know is it's not going to be closing anytime soon for good, but it will be closing for a little while. Okay, so this next one is my opinion. You might have a completely different opinion to me on this one, and if you do, then let me know down in the comments below. But I personally don't think the Festival of Thrills will be returning next year or in future. Now, if you didn't visit the Festival of Thrills, it was an event that took place last month at Alton Towers, which featured live music at each of the 7 major roller coasters. Now, in my opinion, it was okay. It wasn't amazing though. Compared to the other events at Alton Towers like Oktoberfest and Mardi Gras and Scarefest, those events are completely different to what Festival of Thrills was, and I feel like they could have done a lot more with it. The idea behind it was great. They had stages at each of the rides, and they had bands themed to the rides performing and dancers as well. So it had a great concept to it, but I just don't think it was pulled off as well as it could have done. They could have had them performing on that field at the end of Tower Street. I think that would have been a really good idea where people could just sit and chill and watch the bands, just like with Oktoberfest. But yeah, it was just kind of scattered around at the different stages. They did have a timetable of when each of the bands were on, but because all the stages were scattered around Alton Towers, and Alton Towers is obviously huge, it would take you ages to get from one stage to another while trying to fit in all those rides that you wanted to go on in the day. So yeah, it was okay, but I wouldn't rate it as one of the best events at Alton Towers by far. In fact, I'd say it's probably my least favourite event at Alton Towers that they've done in recent history. I don't know, it just kind of felt a little bit rushed to me. I just wanted to get an idea out for the opening of the season. But yeah, just in my opinion, it wasn't as good as those other big events. So I don't think it's going to be returning next year, but I could be wrong. Now, I don't know about you, but I love theme park merchandise. I love collecting little bits of merchandise. I've got it all over this room. And Alton Towers, they have been introducing a lot of great merchandise recently. I won't go through all the different bits of merchandise that they've introduced recently, but there have been some great new additions like new pins, posters, new t-shirts. They've got loads of stuff now. Even Merlin, the Merlin Annual Pass, they have their own merchandise now. They've recently introduced pajamas and socks as well, which are amazing, and people love them. So I think that Alton Towers are going to be bringing in even more merch over the next few years. Going back to the Disney parks, if you look at their merchandise, there is tons. There is absolutely tons of merchandise at the Disney parks. So I feel like Alton Towers may have looked at that and seen that people enjoy collecting the pins and all those different little bits of merchandise and collectibles, and that's what they're going with, because people love that kind of stuff. I mean, just behind the camera I've got a huge board full of Disney and Alton Towers and theme park pins. So yeah, I love collecting little bits like that. I've got the different resins as well from Alton Towers. So yeah, I love collecting theme park merchandise, and I really think that Alton Towers is going to be introducing even more over the next few years, especially for all the different events that they've been introducing. So yeah, I really think they're going to be expanding on it, and I can't wait to see what they introduce next. Alright then, let's talk about Rita. Now, if for some reason you're not aware of what Rita is a launch coaster which opened in April 2005, and it goes 0 to 61 miles per hour in around 2 seconds. There are a lot of different opinions about Rita. Some people love it, some people hate it, and some people just aren't too bothered about it, and I'm in that category as well. I think it's an okay coaster, but it can be rough. It always has a big queue, and I just don't really care for it all that much. Don't get me wrong, that launch is great, but compared to other parks around the world, and even in the UK over at Thorpe Park, there are better ones out there. So with Rita, I don't really care for it all that much, but I will go on it if the queue's really short, if I go on a quiet day. It's not the worst coaster in the world, but I'm just not too fussed about it. So for that reason, I feel like Rita will be the next coaster to go when Alton Towers do decide to bring in a brand new roller coaster. Now you've got to keep in mind that Alton Towers, they have restrictions on roller coasters. They can't be too loud, they can't be too high, which is a little bit annoying. So that's why it always takes a while for Alton Towers to get a brand new roller coaster. The last one we got was Wicker Man, which I love, it's my favourite one in the park. But now I think is a good time for Alton Towers to start looking at getting a brand new roller coaster. I mean, if you look at Thorpe Park, they're getting that brand new coaster, which will be the tallest in the UK. You've also got Chessington World of Adventures, it's also getting a new coaster. So with Alton Towers, hopefully we'll be hearing some news soon about a new coaster. But I do think they're going to have to get rid of one to introduce a new one. Just like they did with the Flume, they got rid of that to bring in the Wicker Man. So if they were to get rid of any coaster in the park to bring in a new roller coaster, I feel like it would be Rita. You've also got to think that Rita, it doesn't fit in with the Dark Forest theme whatsoever. Back when it opened in 2005, it opened as a drag racing roller coaster. So with the Dark Forest, it doesn't really fit in at all. I mean, with 13, that fits in perfectly with the theming, but with Rita, it just doesn't really fit in at all. When they rethemed to the Dark Forest, they did update the backstory of Rita to try and make it fit in, but I just don't think it works very well. So even though I don't think it's very soon that Alton Towers are going to get a new roller coaster, when they do, I do think that it will be Rita that will be the one to go. But who knows, it could be another roller coaster that goes, maybe it could be Oblivion possibly. Let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts are. And sticking with the theme of rides that I think Alton Towers could get rid of, let's talk about the Congo River Rapids, which I think could get a huge refurbishment soon or be taken out completely. Now where do I begin with the Congo River Rapids? So this Rapids ride opened in 1989, so it is a very old ride. I've not done the maths on this one, but it's going to be very old. It's obviously gone through changes over the course of these many years it's been open, but let's just say it's not exactly the best Rapids ride in the world. First of all, let's talk about the fact that you don't actually get wet on the Congo River Rapids, when that's pretty much what the ride is designed for. You get a few splashes every now and again. When I last went on it, at the start of this season, I did get a little bit wet on it, but compared to other rapids around the world, you don't get very wet at all. You have got to take into consideration though that the weather in the UK isn't exactly the same as you would get over in America, over in Orlando for example. We've got some insanely soaking rapids over in Orlando, which are completely different to the Congo River Rapids. But yeah, the weather is completely different, so I can see why. But they do have those different drying systems after you get off the ride. You can get ponchos as well. Even in the queue line, you can buy a poncho. So it's not the end of the world if you do get wet. But correct me if I'm wrong, rapids are designed to get you wet, same as log flumes, which they got rid of a few years ago to introduce Wicker Man. So having said that, if they don't want you to get as wet due to the cold weather, then maybe it's time that they got rid of the Congo River Rapids for good. Now, I do think it is great to have a water ride at a theme park. I think they lack quite a lot here in the UK. I was gutted when they got rid of the log flume at Alton Towers. I mean, I love Wicker Man, it's my favourite coaster in the park, but I do miss the log flume. It was one of my favourites at the park, and it is a shame that they got rid of it. So I do feel like they could do the same with the Congo River Rapids. But if they don't get rid of it, I do think it could do with a huge refurbishment. If you look at the Rapids at Drayton Manor, there's an example of how good Rapids can actually be. And I think Alton Towers, they could do the same. They could do a huge refurbishment, add some new elements to it, and it'd be great again. But at the moment, it's not great. And at the end of last season, it was down for a while. So I do think it either needs a huge refurbishment or just to be taken out completely to make way for a brand new attraction. I'm going to keep on topic of rides which I think need a refurbishment, and let's talk about a ride which needs a lot of work done to it. Let's talk about Jewel. So Jewel opened in 1992 as the Haunted House and was the largest ghost train ride in Europe. It is now called Jewel the Haunted House Strikes Back, and that opened in 2003. So we're almost 20 years old now for the Haunted House Strikes Back, and honestly, Jewel, it has a lot of potential, it really does, but at the moment it is really lacking. A lot of the effects don't work, some of the lasers don't work, just something needs to be done about it. Alton Towers, they're the biggest theme park here in the UK, they make a lot of money. They could do a refurbishment on Jewel, even if it was fixing some of these effects, such as the tunnel. I don't know what you call it. It's the tunnel that spins around when you go through it. That's been turned off for how many years now? I don't know why they don't get that fixed. They could bring in a new story like they did back in 2003 with The Haunted House Strikes Back. There's just a lot of work that needs doing to it because it's not great at the moment, but it does have a lot of potential. I mean, the building that Jewel is in is huge. They could do so much with it, but Alton Towers is just choosing not to at the moment. And I think if they did do a refurbishment on it, it would be a really popular attraction. Who knows if it'll ever get a refurb, we'll just have to see. Pretty much every season it's mentioned that Jewel needs a refurbishment, and they've still not done it. But we'll see over the next few years what happens, but I really hope that they do because it really needs it. Alton Towers has always been a park for the whole family. There's pretty much something for everyone there. You have the massive roller coasters, but you also have those rising attractions for the younger generation too. And recently I've noticed that Alton Towers have been really focusing on those rides and attractions for the younger guests. So let's take the World of David Walliams for example, which opened last season. It's a great area. The World of David Walliams is a really, really good area. It's really well themed, and it's got some great attractions in there as well, like Gangster Granny the Ride. This is a fantastic attraction for kids. As well as that, they've also introduced some new attractions in CBeebies Land, as well as given it a bit of a refurbishment. New for this season, they introduced Hey Loogie's Big Adventure Badge, Andy's Adventures Dinosaur Dig, and JoJo and Gran Gran at Home, which are really fantastic interactive experiences for the younger guests, and I think are great additions to CBeebies Land. As I mentioned earlier, Alton Towers, they do have restrictions for how high they can build their roller coasters, and also the noise levels of the roller coasters. So that's probably why they've been focusing on attractions like this, because for one, it's much easier to plan and build these kind of attractions, and two, it really expands on that family aspect of the park. So in future, I do think Alton Towers are going to be introducing more attractions like this, and more dark rides, which is great because in all honesty, Alton Towers, they do have plenty of roller coasters, plenty of world record breaking roller coasters. So at the moment, I don't think they need a brand new roller coaster, and I would much prefer to see more dark rides at the park. And who knows, maybe they'll even bring Subterra back at the park one day too. So these are just some of my predictions of what I think is going to happen at the Alton Towers Resort over the next few years. These are just my predictions, and you may have completely different ones to me. And if you do, then leave them down in the comments below, because I would love to know your thoughts. If you are new around here and you did enjoy watching this video, then please consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing that notification bell so you don't miss a single thing, because we make plenty of theme park and adventure videos, including lots of Alton Towers content here at Arcadia Adventures, which you don't want to miss. But that is it for this video, so thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.